When is the funeral? I asked, my voice trembling. For my son. I need to know what time. There was a pause. Then she replied flat, cold. He's long gone, Evelyn. We already buried him. Small ceremony. Just close friends. Her voice hit me like ice water. I dropped the lily stem I was holding, the flower crashing softly onto the linoleum. White lilies. Jeremy's favorite since he was little. I'd bought them thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd get to bring them to the hospital. The doctors had said he was stable. They told me there was still time. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, not even sure I was breathing. Buried. I whispered. You never called me. You never told me. When was the last time you spoke to a doctor, Evelyn? Her voice, that voice, it wasn't grieving. It was tired. Irritated. Yesterday morning, I stammered. Dr. Carter said the surgery had gone well. He said Jeremy was resting. Well, he died last night. Infection complications, she said bluntly. So. Yeah. My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the kitchen counter with both hands, knuckles going white. The kitchen spun around me. Clara, I gasped. Why didn't you call me? I tried. You didn't answer. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the call log. There were no missed calls. No messages. I whispered. There are no calls from you. Maybe your phone was off. It wasn't. On the other end, I could hear her walking around. Maybe packing, maybe folding laundry. Come. Unbothered. Look, we're having the funeral Thursday at 2. At Harlan's funeral home. You can come if you want. Thursday? That's the day after tomorrow. It's all planned. Small. Private. Just immediate family. Her church's pastor would be officiating. Not the pastor who'd baptized Jeremy, not the one who'd watched him grow up. Not the church where Jeremy used to sing during Christmas and serve at Sunday brunches. No. It would be her church. Where I was never welcome. Clara, please, I said. Can we talk about this? Jeremy was my son. I've been thinking, Evelyn, she interrupted. And honestly, it might be better if you didn't come at all. I stepped back like she'd slapped me. My hip hit the edge of the table. What did you say? You heard me. That's not your decision to make. He was my husband. And frankly, where have you even been for the past 5 years? You barely called. You barely visited. You weren't part of his life then, so don't pretend you should be part of his death. Her words cut. Because they weren't all lies. I hadn't called enough. I hadn't visited as often as I wanted. But I had tried. I had tried every single time. Every time I planned to come, there was always a problem. Always something Clara said had come up. I did try, I whispered. And trying isn't the same as being there, she snapped. You made excuses. Over and over. So don't play the grieving mother now. It's disrespectful. I stood frozen. Everything about her felt rehearsed. Controlled. Even now, she was managing grief like it was a task on a list. I want to see Jeremy's kids, I said suddenly, desperate to grasp something. I need to say goodbye to his children. There was a pause. Then Clara laughed. Evelyn, what kids? I blinked. He told me, 2 years ago, you were expecting. Then later he said the baby had started walking. Jeremy and I never had children, she said flatly. We agreed early on, no kids. My career, his health. We liked it just the two of us. My mouth went dry. Jeremy had lied? The photos he'd shown me, happy kids, birthday parties, first steps. Had they been strangers' children? Why would he lie? I don't understand, I muttered. Well, I've got things to finish up for the service. It's Thursday. 2 o'clock. If you come, don't cause a scene. This isn't about you. She hung up. And I stood there, clutching a dead phone in one hand and staring at a fallen lily on the floor, wondering if everything I thought I knew about my only son had been a lie. The house was so quiet, it felt unnatural. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something heavy was pressing down on my chest. I leaned on the counter and stared at the floor, at that single white lily, its petals bent and bruised, lying where it had fallen. It should have been in Jeremy's hospital room, not crushed and forgotten on my kitchen tiles. My hands shook as I picked up the phone again and dialed the hospital number. My heart pounded while it rang. St. Anne's Medical Center, how can I help you? A cheerful voice answered. I'm calling about my son, Jeremy Mitchell. He was a patient there recently. Let me transfer you to patient information. Hold music played. Some light, happy tune that didn't match the weight in my chest. I waited, biting my thumbnail, the seconds stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, someone picked up. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we have no record of a Jeremy Mitchell being admitted or treated here in the last 6 months. What? I breathed. That can't be. He had surgery 2 days ago. I spoke to Dr. Carter. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have any Dr. Carter on staff either. I hung up without another word. My knees buckled, and I dropped into the kitchen chair. My thoughts raced in every direction. What hospital had Jeremy been in? Had I just assumed it was St. Anne's? Had he ever actually told me the name? I closed my eyes, trying to remember our last few phone calls. His voice had sounded tired, but kind. Normal. Just Jeremy. Had I missed something? Had I imagined it all? I needed answers. Any kind of truth. I dialed the number for Harlan's Funeral Home, the one Clara mentioned. Harlan's Funeral Home, this is Denise speaking. Hi. I'm calling about a service on Thursday. For Jeremy Mitchell. Oh yes, she said warmly. Mrs. Mitchell already confirmed everything. Closed casket. Small family ceremony. Would you like us to handle the flowers, or? I'm not Mrs. Mitchell, I cut in. I'm Evelyn, Jeremy's mother. There was silence on the line. I could hear the receptionist swallow. I'm terribly sorry. I was told no other family would be attending. That the guest list was finalized. She said I wasn't coming? She told us you preferred to grieve privately. That you didn't want to be disturbed during such a difficult time. I almost dropped the phone. Grieve privately? Was that what she was calling it now? Locking a mother out of her only son's funeral? The service is Thursday, right? I asked, my voice barely holding steady. Well, she hesitated. There's actually been a change. Mrs. Mitchell called earlier today. She moved the service to tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I blinked. Tomorrow. She said she just wanted to get it over with quickly. For everyone's sake. The phone slipped from my hand and landed on the table with a dull thud. I just stared. Jeremy would be buried in less than 12 hours, and I hadn't even known where. My eyes fell to the lily on the floor again. It looked so small, so useless now. I had spent the last few days watering it, hoping I'd get to bring it to him. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in Jeremy's old room. It hadn't changed much in over a decade. The baseball trophies still lined the shelves. His college diploma hung crooked on the wall. His desk lamp still flickered when you turned it on. I touched his books, his old guitar. Everything was exactly how he left it. But he was gone. I reached for the photo on the nightstand. Jeremy at 26, grinning next to Clara on their wedding day. She looked perfect, her arm wrapped tightly around him. But when I looked closer, I saw it. The way my son's eyes were already different. I remembered the moment he first told me I'd be sitting in the second row at the wedding. Clara's grandmother uses a wheelchair, he'd said, his voice soft, apologetic. She needs the front. But honey, I'd said, forcing a smile. I'm the groom's mother. I know, he replied, almost whispering. I'm sorry. It was small. Just a small shift. One little compromise. But now I could see how those little things had added up. I could see how I had slowly been pushed aside. I picked up my old calendar from the year after their wedding. My handwriting stared back at me in black ink. March 12th. Visit Jeremy. Cancelled, Clara's sick. April 5th. Easter dinner. Changed to Clara's parents' house. June 18th. Jeremy's birthday. Reschedule. Never did. August 2nd. Weekend visit. Clara's cousin in town. It was all there. Every plan I made, every time Clara had a reason to keep me away. Always polite. Always logical. But always a wall. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through old messages. I saw the change slowly build. 3 years ago. Love you, Mom. Can't wait to see you Sunday. 2 years ago. Hey, something came up. Can we reschedule? Last year. I'll call you later this week. The messages grew shorter. Colder. Like he was fading away in pieces. But then, 6 months ago, he called me out of nowhere. Mom, are you busy? He asked. Never too busy for you, I'd said. What's wrong? He hesitated. Nothing. Just, remember when I had pneumonia at 12? You stayed in that terrible chair by my bed for 3 nights. Of course I remember. You were so sick. I wasn't leaving your side. I remember the nurse trying to make you leave. But you wouldn't go. Why are you thinking about that now? I'd asked. A pause. I don't know. I've just been remembering things lately. Good things. I never forgot that call. Because it was the last time he said, I love you. The last time he sounded like my Jeremy. The one before Clara rewrote our story. I stared at the clock. 9:41 a.m. Jeremy's funeral had started. I sat in the kitchen, clutching a cold cup of coffee, unable to move. My son was being lowered into the ground, and I wasn't there. Clara had made sure of that. She didn't just push me out of the planning. She moved everything early, without telling me, so I couldn't even try to say goodbye. She didn't want a scene, she'd said. Didn't want me to grieve too loud, too honestly. Maybe that had been her plan all along. Maybe she never wanted me to be part of any of it. Not Jeremy's life. Not his last moments. Not even his funeral. I looked around the kitchen. Everything felt hollow. The light through the window looked fake. Even the old clock on the wall ticked too loudly. I needed answers. Something real. So I started calling every funeral home in town, every cemetery. I spoke to tired receptionists, kind-sounding women with southern accents, young men who tried to help but had no information. Some promised to call back. None did. 7 days passed like that. 7 long, silent days. I barely ate. Barely slept. I just made lists, scribbled down names, and called the next number. And then, on the 7th day, the phone rang. It was her. What the hell are you doing to my life? Clara's voice exploded through the phone like thunder. I pulled it back from my ear, stunned by the sudden anger. What are you talking about? I said slowly. Don't play dumb with me, Evelyn. I know you're behind all this. The lawyers, the questions, the calls. Just stop it. I sat up straight. Lawyers. The probate lawyer called me this morning, she snapped. Apparently there's some issue with Jeremy's will. Some complication. They want documents. Proof of our marriage. Our finances. Everything. I blinked. Jeremy had a will? Don't pretend you don't know. You must have contacted someone, contested something. I haven't contacted anyone, Clara. I've spent the last week trying to find out where you even buried him. Silence. Then quietly, she said, Riverside Cemetery. Section B, Plot 113. I grabbed a pen and wrote it down with shaking fingers. The words didn't feel real until I saw them written in my own handwriting. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. Her voice shifted. Sharp again. Look, I think we need to talk. In person. There are things about Jeremy you don't understand. What things? Not over the phone. Come to the house. Today. I glanced at the address I'd just written. I'm going to see my son first. No, she said quickly. Come here first. Please. Evelyn. It's important. I paused. There was something in her voice. Not anger. Not control. Fear. Real fear. All right, I said. I'll be there in an hour. The house looked the same from the outside. The grass was trimmed. The mailbox still had both their names on it. But when Clara opened the door, she didn't look the same at all. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes were swollen. Her shirt was wrinkled and inside out. Come in, she said softly. Do you want coffee? I walked in. The kitchen, where I'd never been invited before, was cluttered with papers. Legal forms. Letters. Documents everywhere. Clara, what's going on? She poured the coffee with trembling hands. Jeremy changed his will 3 months ago, she said. Right around the time he started asking questions. Questions about what? About you. Why you never called. Why you never visited anymore. She looked up at me, her face pale. I told him you were busy with your own life. That you didn't want to be bothered. I said nothing. Just waited. But he didn't believe me. So he hired a private investigator. My heart stopped. He what? He wanted to know the truth. I set my cup down slowly. What did the investigator find? Clara's face collapsed. Her shoulders sagged as if she'd been carrying this weight for years. Everything, she said. The phone calls you made. The emails you sent. The birthday cards you mailed. I deleted them. I blocked numbers. I made up reasons why he couldn't talk to you. I even texted you pretending to be him. Just a few times, I swear. When he was busy. I thought I was protecting him. Protecting him from what? I asked, though my voice cracked. You. The word hit harder than I expected. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising. When we got married, he was always talking about you. Mom said this. I need to ask Mom that. I felt like I was married to both of you. I needed space. I needed to matter too. So you erased me, I said, my voice quiet but cold. You didn't ask for space. You stole it. She nodded, tears falling now. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I never meant to keep you apart completely. I wanted to be the most important person in his life. And were you? I asked. We were happy for a while, she whispered. But 3 months ago he changed. He started asking questions. He didn't believe my answers anymore. He remembered me, I said, more to myself than to her. He remembered who I was. Clara nodded. He didn't say it directly, but I think he was planning to leave me. The silence in the room became unbearable. I looked at the mess of papers spread across the table. One thing stood out among them. A thick legal envelope with my name on it. He left you everything, Clara said. The house. The money. Everything. The lawyer has a letter. Jeremy wrote it for you. Her voice cracked again. He knew. Evelyn. He found out what I did. And he died thinking I was a monster. Maybe he had. Or maybe he was just heartbroken. But one thing was certain. He had tried to make it right. Even if it was too late for him to say it out loud. He'd made sure I would finally hear the truth. I need to see that lawyer, I said, standing up. And I need to read whatever my son left for me. Clara didn't argue. She just nodded and handed me a card with a name and address written in blue ink. Daniel Harlow, attorney at law. His office was on Main Street, not far from the old bakery where Jeremy used to beg for lemon muffins after school. The drive there felt surreal, like I was being pulled toward something heavy and unmovable, something I wasn't ready for, but couldn't avoid. Daniel Harlow looked younger than I expected. Late 40s maybe, kind eyes, no wedding ring. His office smelled like old books and polished wood, and everything inside was too neat, like no one had touched anything in years. When he saw me, he stood and extended his hand. Mrs. Evelyn Mitchell. Thank you for coming. I shook his hand. My fingers were cold. I believe you're here for the letter Jeremy left you, he said, already walking toward a locked drawer. He gave very specific instructions. He made changes to his will 3 months ago. He also hired a private investigator and left full control of his estate in your name. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. My name was written on it in Jeremy's handwriting. Not neat like usual. Shaky, rushed, like he had written it while his hands were tired. My eyes blurred instantly. Would you like a moment alone to read it? I nodded, unable to speak. He stepped out quietly and closed the door behind him. I held that envelope for a long time before opening it. I traced the letters of my name with my fingertips. I wasn't ready. But I also couldn't wait another second. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, written in blue ink. 4 full pages. Each word pulled me deeper into the kind of pain only a mother could understand, but also the kind of love only a son could give. Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Daniel has followed my instructions. I don't know how much time I had left when I wrote this. The doctors weren't hopeful. But I needed you to know the truth. About everything. I started noticing it a while ago. We hadn't had a real conversation in over a year. Every time I tried to call you, Clara said you were busy. When I tried to visit, she said you had plans or weren't feeling well or didn't want me around. When I asked her directly, she told me you'd said you needed space. That I was too dependent on you. That you wanted me to grow up, focus on my marriage. And I believed her because I trusted her. Because I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. But it never sat right with me. You were the one who stayed up all night when I had the flu, who worked 2 jobs so I could go to college, who made terrible meatloaf every Wednesday because I loved it when I was 12. You were never the kind of person to push someone away. So I hired someone to find out the truth. The tears came hotter then. Hot, fast. I couldn't stop them. But I kept reading. The report showed me everything. The missed calls. The emails. The birthday cards that never made it to me. Messages you sent that Clara deleted. She even texted you from my phone sometimes while I was working. I confronted her. She cried. She said she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that she just wanted to feel like she came first. I told her that's not how love works. That you don't have to shrink one bond to grow another. You taught me that, Mom. When I was worried about dating in high school, you told me the heart has infinite space for love. That the people who really care want you to be happy, not isolated. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Clara. But I needed you to know I never stopped loving you. Even when it looked like I had forgotten you. I hadn't. Even when I didn't call. I wanted to. Even when I sounded distant. I was hurting. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. This wasn't grief anymore. It was release. It was clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't angry at Jeremy. I was angry at what had been stolen from both of us. I'm leaving everything to you, Mom. Not because of guilt or revenge. Because you're my family. You always were. Not because of blood but because of love. You raised me. You shaped me. And even when you thought I didn't want you, you still loved me. You deserve this. But I'm also leaving you with a choice. Clara doesn't know about the will yet. She thinks everything comes to her. If you want to help her, you can. If you want her to face the consequences, that's your decision. I trust you. You'll know what to do. You always did. I set the letter down, hands trembling, and took a deep breath. When Daniel returned, I wiped my eyes and sat up straighter. My son, I said, my voice hoarse, was the best man I've ever known. He nodded. He spoke of you often. He wanted to make things right. I want to see the investigator's report, I said. And everything else he left behind. Of course. Daniel handed me a thick folder and a smaller envelope. That contains instructions for the safety deposit box, he added. Jeremy wanted you to open it alone, when you're ready. I held the envelope close. And Clara? I asked. He hesitated. She's been calling every day. She knows something is wrong. I haven't told her the contents of the will yet. Don't, I said firmly. Not until I decide what comes next. Daniel nodded. Mrs. Mitchell. I've read the reports. The messages. The logs. What Clara did to you, to both of you, was cruel. You have every right to feel whatever you're feeling. I stood slowly. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, I said. But I know one thing for sure. My son didn't die thinking I had abandoned him. And that truth alone was enough to carry me through whatever came next. The sky was overcast as I drove toward the cemetery. The kind of gray that wraps around you and makes everything feel heavier. Riverside Cemetery, Section B, Plot 113. I whispered the words to myself again and again like a prayer. For 7 days, I hadn't known where my son was. And now I did. It didn't make it easier. But it made it real. I parked near a row of old oak trees and walked slowly, carrying the same white lilies that had wilted in my kitchen for over a week. I wasn't sure if they were too dry or too sad-looking, but I didn't care. They were Jeremy's favorite. That was all that mattered. I found the plot. The grass was still disturbed. Fresh. Like time hadn't even had a chance to smooth it over. A simple gray stone stood at the head of the grave. His name. Jeremy Mitchell. His birth date. His death date. And nothing else. No beloved son. No devoted husband. Just his name. I knelt slowly, the damp ground soaking into my jeans, and placed the lilies gently at the base of the headstone. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder." A breeze rustled through the trees above me. For a moment, it felt like he was there. Just for a second, like when he used to run into the kitchen, laughing after school. Or when he'd text me a joke out of nowhere. I stayed there for almost an hour, talking softly, telling him what I'd learned, what Clara had admitted, what the lawyer had given me. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. I just talked. And when I stood up to leave, something inside me felt steadier. Not healed. That would take time. But steadier. On the way home, I kept glancing at the envelope Jeremy had left. Inside it were instructions for the safety deposit box. I wasn't ready to open it. Not yet. But I needed to find the key. He'd said it was hidden in the old coffee can, the one in the pantry. That old Maxwell House tin had been sitting on the top shelf of my pantry for over 15 years. I hadn't touched it since Jeremy left for college. Back then, it was full of quarters and dimes for his lunch money, pizza nights, or baseball tournament fees. It had always been our little bank. My hands shook slightly as I pulled it down. It was heavier than I remembered. I pried off the lid and saw the same familiar mix of loose change. But buried beneath the coins was something else. Something wrapped in tissue paper. And a small brass key. I unfolded the tissue first. Inside was a bracelet. Silver, slightly tarnished, engraved on the inside. My son, my pride, my joy. I had given it to Jeremy on his 16th birthday. He used to wear it every day, and then one day, it disappeared. I'd assumed he lost it or outgrew it. But he had kept it. All these years. My throat tightened. I held the bracelet in one hand and the small key in the other. There was a tiny tag attached to the key with a box number. 113. The same number as his grave plot. Jeremy had planned everything. Even this. Even now. As I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the key and the bracelet, my phone buzzed. I didn't want to answer it. But when I saw Clara's name, something told me I had to. "Hello," I said, my voice flat. "Evelyn," she breathed. "Thank God you answered. Please. I need to see you again." I said nothing. "There are things I didn't tell you yesterday," she went on. "Important things. About why I did what I did. About things that happened before Jeremy and I even met." "Why now, Clara?" I asked. "You've hidden the truth for years. Why start telling it now?" "Because you deserve to know the whole truth," she said, her voice quieter now. "Please. Just one last time. After that, I won't bother you again." I looked down at the key in my hand. "I'll come," I said slowly. "But only because I need answers. After today, if I see you again, it'll be through lawyers." "I understand," she said. An hour later, I sat across from her in the same living room where we'd had that painful conversation. But this time, the energy was different. The papers were gone. The kitchen was clean. She had made coffee again, but this time it was served in porcelain cups, not mismatched mugs. As if she was trying to be polite. "I need to start from the beginning," she said. "From before I ever met Jeremy." I didn't say anything. Just watched her. "I was engaged once before," she said, looking down at her coffee. "To a man named Eric. We were together 3 years. But his mother hated me from the beginning. Said I wasn't good enough. She convinced him to leave me 3 weeks before the wedding. I waited. The air between us was still thick with years of unspoken words. When I met Jeremy, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone ruin it. Especially not a mother. It wasn't about you, Evelyn. It was about me. My fear. My past. I didn't want to lose him the way I lost Eric." "So you cut me out," I said. "I thought I was protecting our marriage," she said, her voice shaking. "But somewhere along the way, it stopped being protection and became control. I liked being the only woman in Jeremy's life. Too much." I shook my head slowly. "Even when it was hurting him?" "I told myself it wasn't," she said. "I told myself you had your own life. That maybe you didn't care anymore. and I started to believe it. She looked up at me then, her eyes rimmed red. "The investigator found everything," she said. "Not just the calls. He found hospital records. You were in the hospital last year for 4 days. An emergency surgery. You listed Jeremy as your contact. He got the call. He was already in his car, driving to see you. But I called him back. I stared at her. I told him you were fine. That you'd asked not to be disturbed. That your friend Margaret was taking care of you. That you didn't want him to worry." I remembered those days in the hospital. How I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking my son didn't even care enough to call. "He wanted to come," she said, crying now. "Every time something happened, your car broke down, your ankle sprain, your pneumonia, he wanted to be there. But I told him you didn't want him to." The room swayed around me. All those moments when I thought I was alone. I wasn't. He had been trying. He just couldn't get through the walls Clara built. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because when I saw your face after you found out about the funeral, I realized I didn't just take Jeremy from you. I took you from him too." She wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. "And in the end, I lost him anyway. He told me, the night before his last surgery, that he was going to leave me. That he couldn't stay married to someone who had kept him from his mother." I closed my eyes. My chest ached with the weight of words that had never been spoken. That last conversation we never had. It should have been between Jeremy and me. Not like this. She looked at me, eyes full of something that looked like regret, but not quite remorse. "He died thinking I was a monster," she said. "And maybe I am." I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "I'm going to the bank," I said, "to see what else my son left behind. What he wanted me to know." She followed me to the door. "Evelyn, the will. The inheritance. I know I don't deserve it. But I have to ask, what are you going to do?" I turned to face her. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "But whatever I do, it won't be because you asked for mercy. It'll be because I know what Jeremy would have wanted." The safety deposit box was inside a quiet room beneath First Federal Bank. The walls were lined with metal boxes, each one identical except for the small numbers etched into the front. The clerk led me silently to box 113, just like the grave, just like the key. "I'll give you some privacy," she said, and stepped out, closing the door softly behind her. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the lock. The click it made felt like a whisper from Jeremy. Inside was a simple manila envelope and a small velvet jewelry box. I took both and sat at the little table in the corner. First, the envelope. Inside were 3 folded letters, each one addressed to me in Jeremy's handwriting, but dated across different months over the past 2 years. I opened the oldest one first. It was dated 18 months ago. "Mom, I don't know what's happened between us. I keep thinking about it, trying to remember if we fought or if I said something wrong, but I can't come up with anything. I miss you. I keep picking up the phone to call, but it never feels like the right time. Clara always says you're busy. I hope you're okay. I hope I didn't lose you." The second letter was from 8 months ago. The tone had changed. Less confusion, more suspicion. "Something isn't right. Every time I want to see you, something comes up. Clara always has a reason. And I keep remembering how close we used to be. I don't understand how we went from weekly calls to nothing. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't know why. But I'm going to find out." The last letter was from 6 weeks ago, right around when he'd updated his will and hired the investigator. "I know the truth now. I was right. She's been keeping us apart, Mom. Deleting messages. Lying to both of us. But I'm fixing it. I changed the will. I left everything to you. Not because I want to hurt Clara, but because you're my real family. I wish I had more time. I wish I could come to your door and tell you all of this in person. I wish I could hug you. I love you, Mom. I've never stopped. And I'm so sorry I didn't figure it out sooner." I folded the letters gently and pressed them to my chest. My son hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't let me go. He'd been reaching for me, even in his last days. With trembling fingers, I opened the velvet box. Inside was my mother's ring. I had given it to Jeremy when he got engaged, hoping one day he'd pass it on to a daughter of his own. He hadn't. Instead, he'd kept it. And under the ring was a tiny note. This belongs with you. Love. Your son. I slid the ring onto my finger and sat there quietly for a while, surrounded by letters, memories, and the proof that no matter how deep Clara's lies went, they hadn't broken the bond between me and my boy. As I left the bank, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Daniel Harlow, the lawyer. He'd scheduled a meeting with Clara and me the next morning. I hadn't told him to arrange it, but I understood why he did. It was time to decide what came next. The next day, Clara showed up at the office looking like a woman who hadn't slept in weeks. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair pulled back, a tissue clenched in her hand like it was the only thing keeping her upright. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. But I didn't move. I didn't say anything. Please sit, I said, calm and steady. Daniel cleared his throat and opened a folder. Mrs. Mitchell has made a decision regarding Jeremy's estate. Clara's fingers clutched the edge of the chair. I'm giving you the house, I said. Her head jerked up. What? The house is yours. You can stay. But that's all. I leaned forward. Everything else, the savings account, the life insurance money, will go into a foundation. In Jeremy's name. It'll help children stay connected with their grandparents after divorce or family conflict. The way we never got to. Clara looked stunned. Why would you do that? Because Jeremy wouldn't have wanted you to be homeless, I said. But he also wouldn't have wanted you to profit from the damage you caused. Daniel handed over some papers. There are conditions. Clara glanced at me, eyes wide. What kind of conditions? You'll sign a statement, I said. Admitting everything you did. How you lied. How you intercepted messages. How you kept a son from his mother. I'll never speak of it publicly, I added. Unless you come near me again. She nodded slowly. And is that all? You'll also attend counseling. Real counseling. Because what you did didn't just hurt me. It hurt Jeremy. You need to understand why. She lowered her head and wiped her face. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small photo album. I slid it across the table. These are pictures of Jeremy growing up. His first day of school. His high school graduation. Christmas mornings. Birthdays. All the things you never saw. All the moments you never asked about because you were too busy trying to erase me. She opened it with shaking hands and stared at the photo of 5-year-old Jeremy grinning through chocolate frosting on his cheeks. This is the boy you married, I said. The man he became because he was raised in love. Not control. She turned the page to a photo of us at his graduation, his arm wrapped proudly around my shoulder. He told everyone that day I was his hero, I said softly. Because I worked 2 jobs to help him through school. Because I never missed a game. Because I never gave up. Clara looked up at me, her voice cracking. He said that about me once too. After we got married. That I was strong. That he respected me. Then why wasn't that enough? I asked. Why did you need to be the only woman in his life? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted back to the photo album. Because I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid of losing him the same way I lost someone else once. But I lost him anyway. Just slower. One lie at a time. Daniel handed her the documents. She signed them in silence, tears dropping onto the paper. And as I watched her write her name, admitting her guilt in black ink, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was justice. And it was enough. When Clara finished signing the documents, she didn't look at me right away. Her hands trembled as she closed the photo album and placed it gently on the edge of the table like it was something sacred. Maybe for the first time it was. Then she whispered, Evelyn, could you tell me more about him? I blinked, surprised. I know I don't deserve to ask, she added quickly. But I want to understand who he really was. Before I met him. I only knew the part of his life I shared. But you knew him from the start. For a moment, I hesitated. A big part of me wanted to say no. After everything she had done, after every lie, every message she blocked, every memory she erased, how could she deserve any more of him? But then I remembered something. In one of Jeremy's unsent letters, he had written, I wish I could tell Clara about the time you taught me to drive in the church parking lot. Or about how you used to sing Beatles songs while cooking. I wish she understood that loving you never meant loving her less. He had still wanted her to know me, to understand the whole picture, and maybe, just maybe, to help her become a better person. He was curious about everything, I said finally. Even as a toddler. When he was 4, he took apart our toaster because he wanted to see where the toast disappeared to. Clara smiled faintly. He still did that. Always tinkering with something. He got that from my father, I said softly. Jeremy never knew him, but he was an engineer too. Always fixing, always improving. I closed my purse and stood up. Jeremy used to say he inherited the family gift for solving problems. Maybe that's what he was trying to do at the end. Solve the biggest one of all. Clara stood too, still holding the album close to her chest. You mean, bringing us together? Yes, I said. His 2 families. Me and you. He loved us both, even when it tore him apart. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't want to choose between us. And I made him feel like he had to. I nodded. That's why it hurt him so much. She followed me toward the door. Evelyn, she said quietly, thank you. For not destroying me. For giving me the house. For not taking it all away. I paused in the doorway. Don't thank me. Thank Jeremy. This was his mercy, not mine. She nodded, blinking back fresh tears. I left the office without looking back, but I could feel the weight in the room lighten behind me. As I stepped into the afternoon sun, something shifted in me too. It wasn't happiness. I wasn't healed. But I felt like I had finally done right by my son. That night, I went home and placed the ring, the one Jeremy returned to me, on my nightstand. I took the photo album Clara had signed and placed it next to his old baseball glove. And then I sat down to write a letter. Not to Clara. Not to the lawyer. But to Jeremy. I told him everything. How his words had given me strength. How his truth had guided me. How his love had lasted, even past death. I wrote until the morning sun crept through the window. And when I was done, I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in the same coffee can where he had hidden the bracelet and key. Maybe one day someone would find it. Maybe not. But I needed it to exist. 6 months later, a small package arrived in the mail. There was no return address, but I knew who it was from. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Jeremy, around age 30, standing in a garden, laughing at something off camera. The sun caught the side of his face just right. He looked alive. Bright. Happy. Taped to the back was a short note in Clara's handwriting. I found this in his desk drawer. He kept it next to his computer at work. I thought you should have it. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. I'm learning. I placed the photo on my mantle next to the others. Baby pictures, graduation smiles, a snapshot of us on a fishing trip when he was 10. And that one, his final laugh frozen in time. He had left me many gifts, truth, clarity, choice. But this photo felt different. It was proof that even though Clara had tried to pull us apart, our connection had never truly broken. Every Sunday morning, I worked in my garden. I wore the ring Jeremy gave back to me, watered the roses he loved, and whispered little stories to the wind. Not stories of loss. Not anymore. But stories of him. Of his laughter. Of his love. And of how, in the end, he had found his way home to me. Not in body, but in everything he left behind. The foundation in Jeremy's name came together faster than I expected. Daniel helped me with the paperwork, setting up the legal side of it, and soon after, I was meeting with local organizations that supported children and families. We named it the Mitchell Bridge Fund. The idea was simple. No child should ever be cut off from someone who loves them, especially not because of manipulation or pride. We focused on helping families reconnect after divorce or estrangement. Therapists volunteered to provide sessions. Teachers and school counselors reached out, saying they knew students who needed help. And just like that, something beautiful started to grow from something that had been broken. Jeremy would have been proud. I could feel that in my bones. Every few weeks, I'd get a report. One family reunited after years apart. A grandmother finally allowed to visit her grandson. A father who hadn't seen his daughter since she was 5 finally got supervised visitation. I kept all the thank you letters in a drawer in the living room. I never read them out loud. But I read them often. And yet, even as the foundation took off, even as I watered the garden each Sunday and placed fresh flowers by Jeremy's photo, there were moments when the grief still caught me off guard. Like when his favorite song came on the radio in the grocery store. Or when I found an old voicemail from him I'd forgotten to delete. Sometimes I just missed his voice. Other times I missed the future we'd never get. But there was one thing I didn't miss anymore. The guilt. The crushing belief that he had drifted away because of something I had done. That part had finally lifted. One morning, just before Thanksgiving, I got a message from Clara. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Not since our last meeting at the lawyer's office. The message was simple. Would you be willing to meet again? There's something I need to give you. No pressure. Only if you're open to it. At first, I ignored it. I didn't owe her anything. But a few days later, I replied with one word, okay. She invited me to a small cafe on the quieter side of town. When I arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, dressed neatly for the first time in a long while. Her eyes still carried sadness, but she looked clearer. Like someone trying to start over. Thank you for coming, she said, standing up briefly. I nodded and sat down. What is it? She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather journal. This was Jeremy's, she said. He used to write in it when he couldn't sleep. I didn't know about it until recently. I found it hidden behind some books in the office. She slid it across the table. I didn't read everything. Just the first few pages. But most of it seems meant for you. I stared at the journal, hesitant to touch it. Why are you giving this to me now? I asked softly. Because. I don't want to hold on to something that never belonged to me, she said. Not anymore. Not after everything. I've started therapy like we agreed. Real therapy. I've written my statement, and I'm working through it. Slowly. Honestly. I gave a small nod. She continued, and part of healing is letting go of what I stole. And this. His words, they were meant for you. I picked up the journal and held it close to my chest. It was warm from her hands, but something about it felt like it had always belonged to me. There's something else, she said, hesitating. I've been volunteering. At one of the centers the foundation works with. Helping organize letters and events. Just small things. But I needed to do something. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said, good. She looked down. Evelyn. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect kindness. But I want you to know I'm trying. I studied her for a moment. Not the woman who had lied and twisted and hurt me. Not the one who'd pretended to speak for my son. But someone quieter. Smaller. Still lost maybe, but reaching. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, I said truthfully. But I don't hate you anymore. And that's something. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. That's more than I hoped for. After she left, I sat alone with the journal. I didn't open it there. I wanted to read it in Jeremy's old room, surrounded by the things he left behind. That night, I lit a candle and opened the first page. His handwriting was neat like always. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. She told me Mom didn't want to come. Said she made plans with friends. But something about that didn't feel right. I miss her voice. I miss our Sunday calls. I hope she's okay. Each page pulled me deeper into his thoughts, his doubts, his memories. Some pages were just stories about his childhood. Others were questions, things he wanted to ask me. Regrets he had. Letters he never sent. And as I read, I felt him with me more than ever before. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't stopped needing me. And now, through these pages, he was giving me every moment we had lost. The last entry was different. There were no words. Just a sketch, rough but clear. It was of our old house. The porch swing, the garden, the crooked mailbox. And sitting on the swing, side by side, 2 figures. A woman with her hair in a bun. And a boy, smiling up at her. Underneath the sketch, he had written, "Home is wherever you are, Mom." I closed the journal and held it tightly. Jeremy had come home to me. Not in the way I had prayed for. Not in the way I dreamed of. But in truth. In memory. In love that refused to die. He had given me that final gift. Now it was up to me to live like I deserved it. The winter that followed was long, and quieter than usual. The house felt more still, not empty, but settled. There was peace in the silence now. Not loneliness. Just space to remember. I placed Jeremy's journal in a small wooden box and tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. Every night, before turning off the light, I'd glance at it. Some nights I read a page or two. Others, I just held it in my lap, knowing that his thoughts had been captured forever. That even though time had been stolen from us, his words gave a piece of it back. People in town began to know my name again. Not just as someone's mother or someone's widow, but as the founder of the Mitchell Bridge Fund. Local news covered one of our reunification stories. A girl who hadn't seen her grandmother in 4 years now spent every Saturday in her kitchen, learning how to bake. They asked me to speak at a community event. I was hesitant at first. I had never been someone who liked microphones or stages. But Daniel said something that stuck with me. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be true. So I spoke. Not about loss but about connection. I told them about my son, and about love that refuses to die, even when people try to bury it. I told them how, in the end, it wasn't money or property or revenge that mattered. It was being seen, being known, being loved. After the event, people came up to me, some with tears, some with stories of their own. One woman said her daughter hadn't spoken to her in years. Another told me her son's wife had done the same thing Clara had. They thought they were alone in that pain. But they weren't. None of us were. A few weeks later, I received a small envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photo, Jeremy at maybe 11 years old, dressed as a cowboy for Halloween, his smile wide and missing 2 front teeth. On the back was a note. Found this in one of his old shoe boxes. Thought you should have it. It wasn't signed. But I knew it was from Clara. She didn't try to reach out again, and I didn't respond. But the photo found its place on my living room wall, beside the others. I smiled every time I passed it. Not just because of Jeremy's missing teeth, but because of how bright his eyes had always been, even when he was small. Full of wonder. Full of mischief. Spring came slowly. The garden started blooming again. Jeremy's roses, white and pink, opened wide by mid-April. I added a bench to the yard, just beneath the old maple tree. I called it his spot. One Sunday morning, I saw a little girl riding her bike with training wheels down the street. She looked so much like Jeremy had at that age. I waved, and she waved back with a smile so wide it nearly split her face. Her mother walked behind her, and I asked if they wanted some lemonade. They said yes. That morning turned into a tradition. Every Sunday they stopped by. Just for a few minutes. Just for something sweet. But it made the porch feel alive again. On the 1-year anniversary of Jeremy's passing, I visited his grave alone. The sky was clear. The breeze soft. I brought fresh lilies and sat on the grass, telling him everything that had happened. I wish you could see it, honey, I whispered. Your name is helping people. Your story is healing others. And Clara's trying. Slowly. She volunteers at the shelter now. Says it helps her feel closer to you. I took a deep breath. She's not forgiven. But I've let go of the anger. I had to. For me. And for you. I looked up at the sky, half expecting the breeze to shift, for some sign that he'd heard me. And maybe he had. Or maybe the truth was that love like that never really needs signs. It just lives on, in words, in memory, in the way your heart still aches when you say their name. As I stood to leave, I noticed something near the base of the headstone. A small, smooth stone with Jeremy's initials carved into it. Someone had left it behind. Maybe Clara. Maybe someone else he had touched in his life. I picked it up, held it in my palm, and smiled. Later that evening, I received a phone call from Daniel. There's one last thing, he said. A small account Jeremy opened just a few weeks before he passed. He didn't include it in the will, but he left a note saying it was for something simple, something kind. I didn't understand at first. He named it the Lemon Fund, Daniel added, chuckling. It's just a few $1,000s. Enough to buy lemonade stands for kids, or give supplies to local shelters. That kind of thing. I laughed softly. He always loved lemonade. Said it tasted like sunshine. Exactly, Daniel said. Would you like to set it up? Yes, I said. I think he'd like that. And so we did. Every summer, we funded a few local kids who wanted to set up lemonade stands. In return, they promised to donate a portion of their earnings to any cause they cared about. One boy sent his to the animal shelter. A girl donated to cancer research in memory of her grandmother. A little pair of twins used their earnings to buy books for the school library. Jeremy would have loved it. He would have smiled at every story. And I smiled too. Because somehow, through all the loss and lies and pain, we'd found something lasting. Not just a memory, but a legacy. Summer arrived quietly that year. The heat wasn't harsh, it wrapped around everything gently, like it understood that the world had already endured enough. The roses bloomed again, brighter than ever. Jeremy's bench under the maple tree became a little sanctuary, not just for me, but for anyone who needed a moment of stillness. One afternoon, I sat there with a cup of iced tea in hand and the sun streaming through the leaves. A soft breeze passed over my skin, and I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel angry. I just felt light. I had finally learned something I never expected. Grief never truly leaves you, but it does change its shape. What begins as a crushing weight eventually becomes something you carry with care. It becomes part of you, but not all of you. That afternoon, a young woman named Lila, one of the foundation's new interns, came to visit. She had heard about the Mitchell Bridge Fund in her university's social work program and asked to volunteer during her summer break. "I've read Jeremy's story," she told me gently, sitting beside me on the bench. "And I think I understand parts of it. I haven't spoken to my dad in almost 5 years. My stepmom always said he didn't want to see me. But now I wonder." She trailed off, her eyes distant. I nodded. Sometimes the lies are loud, but the love is still there. Quiet, waiting to be heard again. She looked at me with soft eyes. "Do you think people can really repair that kind of damage?" I didn't rush the answer. I watched the wind play with the rose petals before I finally replied. "I think healing starts with truth. Not just hearing it but telling it, even when it hurts. And I think the people who truly love us, they'll wait. Or they'll find a way to reach us again, like my son did." She smiled, wiping a tear that had formed in the corner of her eye. "Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. When she left, I felt something deep in my chest settle again. Later that night, I opened the last drawer of Jeremy's old desk and found a dusty folder I hadn't noticed before. Inside were some of his old school essays, doodles, and one paper from high school titled, "What Love Means to Me." In his teenage scrawl, Jeremy had written, "Love means you never stop trying, even when it's hard. Love means letting people grow without letting them go. Love means forgiveness, because everyone messes up, even the people we think are perfect." I read those lines over and over. That was my son. That was the heart he carried. And that was the lesson he left me with. Love doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. It means truth. It means choosing connection over control. Every single time. I took that essay, framed it, and hung it near the entrance of the community center where the foundation was based. Every person who walked in saw Jeremy's words first. It became a quiet promise to every visitor. This place is built on love that never gave up. In the years that followed, the foundation grew. We expanded to neighboring towns. Volunteers doubled. Children and grandparents found each other again. Families rebuilt their bridges. And Clara? She stayed true to her word. She kept going to therapy. She continued volunteering. Humbly. Quietly. She never asked for recognition. But sometimes when a family reconnected because of our work, I'd catch her smiling in the back of the room. Like she knew she was helping rewrite stories, even if she couldn't change her own. One chilly autumn evening, she approached me after a fundraiser and said, "I know I can't undo what I did. But I can live every day trying to honor the man Jeremy was." I nodded. That's all anyone can do now. And I meant it. Because the past couldn't be erased. But the future? That was still unwritten. And every act of love, every repaired connection, was a page being rewritten the way it should have been all along. In the quiet of my home, when the day was done and the porch light flickered on, I often sat by Jeremy's photo and whispered, "We did it, sweetheart. We found each other again. And your story is helping others find their way too." The most powerful stories, I realized, aren't the ones shouted the loudest. They're the ones lived with love, spoken in silence, and passed on like seeds in the wind. Moral of the story. Never let fear or control stand between love. Truth, no matter how delayed, has the power to heal. And even in the face of betrayal, real love finds its way back. Not for revenge, but for redemption. Jeremy didn't leave behind just grief. He left behind a bridge. And I crossed it. Into peace. Into purpose. Into love that never let go.